winningest Power 5 program in the last 4 years, and then the only school to have 3 guys drafted in the top 16. I mean, you can go on and on and on just how blessed we've all been, and coaches know it takes a team to win, so shout out to the administration, the fans, coaches, but most of all the players.
Welcome into the Sic Em Podcast. I'm your host, John Morris. From coaching his brothers and sisters at a young age to taking over a Baylor program that had not seen postseason play in nearly 2 decades, Coach Drew has yet to find a challenge too grand to take on.
It's a different year, it's a different journey, and I equate it to climbing the top of a mountain. You know how to get up there, but the path changes because you have different weather, different climate, different tools, different people on the journey.
Now, after 21 years and taking Baylor to heights that few programs have been, there is still work to be done.
And Baylor and the fans at the Foster Pavilion enjoying their first conference victory in this building.
Coach Drew is a father and a husband, a devout Christian, a 3-time Big 12 Coach of the Year, a national champion, and is proud to be the head men's basketball coach at Baylor University. Thanks for sitting down with us. You have your regular cup of coffee with you there. How do you drink your coffee?
Straight black.
I know the answer to that. How many cups a day?
Too many. Hey, the older we get, the more you need, right?
Well, people would look at you and your energy, and they would say, why does that guy need coffee, right?
Well, I can tell you that Coach Driscoll was the first one on our staff to ever introduce coffee. And I remember Coach Tang and I were like, who drinks coffee? And then you put enough cream and sugar in there, you get through the morning, and then you start having kids, and then all of a sudden the cream and sugar isn't in there anymore, and it's straight black. It's like, help me, you know?
Oh, man, that's great. When did you develop? So is that when you started drinking coffee?
Yeah, it was Coach Driscoll. So he taught us all our bad habits, you know?
There's another guy that doesn't need coffee, really.
Oh, my gosh. So anyway, yeah, he was the only one that used to drink coffee, and then all of us, I mean, that first couple of years, you just worked, and there was not much sleep, and then we all started having kids, and then you needed a little pick-me-up, so that was it.
All right, we'll get to those first few years. Let's go back further than that. Your dad, grew up in a coaching family. I was a PK, so I was a preacher's kid. You were a CK. You were a coach's kid, right?
Both tough.
What was that?
Tough, yeah.
What was that like growing up?
Well, I can tell you that my dad, when he was at LSU, he was gone. I think it was 155 nights he had hotel receipts for. And my mom tells a story. He came home one night, and we're like, who's the burglar? And so at that point, didn't understand at the time, but he wanted to spend more time with us and moved, and he was on the fast track to be a Division I head coach at an early age, and he basically gave that up to go to a small Christian school where we could spend time with them. And the gym was the sanctuary was your playground. The gym was mine, and me, my brother and sister. I mean, if it was basketball, wiffle ball, if it was football, whatever, like we just had 24/7 access to the gym, and that meant we got to spend time with him too, which was really cool. And from there, just loved. Always summer times, basketball camps, played when I was young, and then God had other plans for me, and coached my brother and sister's teams at an early age. And then in college, I wanted to get into coaching. My dad's like, you got to go to law school first, and I was like, well, I don't like to read that much. But anyway, he had a position open, and was blessed enough to be on his staff. And then after 1 year, went from restricted earnings coach to he had an opening full-time assistant, and so I think I was the youngest full-time assistant at that point. And then my dad's a Hall of Fame coach, so blessed to learn from a Hall of Fame coach, but more importantly, he's a Hall of Fame dad, so that's what matters most.
Very cool. So you grew up around it. Did you, or when did you start thinking, I'd like to do what my dad does?
Well, you know, I remember one of the practices, my dad would take us recruiting, and we would keep track of all the stats, and then we'd start draw up plays and stuff. And I remember that was pretty neat. So like it went from just playing 2-on-2, 3-on-3 to drawing up plays and getting into that part of things. And God does everything for a reason. I was really small and 5'1.5" my sophomore year, and at that point I liked drawing up more and more plays because I thought I wasn't going to be a pro player at this height. So, but I always had a passion to, with my dad, just form teams, try to help people reach their goals. My brother was Mr. Basketball in Indiana, and that's a real tough achievement in a basketball state, and being able to work him out and help him reach his goals. I mean, that fulfilled me, and everyone has different talents and abilities, and being able to help my dad's teams be successful. One thing I found out, and I'm sorry it's such a long answer, but we had Jim Herrick Sr. just won the championship at UCLA, and Jim Herrick Jr. was on our staff for a year. We went to the Sweet 16. My brother hit that legendary shot, and I remember Jim Herrick Jr. left and went and worked for his dad. And I remember he said, I had no idea. And I said, what do you mean? He said, being a coach's son is like being a head coach, because you feel all the pressure. Normally as an assistant coach, you feel pressure, but at the end of the day, when it's your dad, I mean, then every negative article, I mean, just like I think every parent can relate, if someone writes a negative article about their son or daughter, probably hurts them worse than the son or, so you just have that built-in pressure. So when you become a head coach, you're already used to everything because you've basically been like that. And my dad always delegated a lot, and we've always delegated a lot because of that. And I think that's a big reason our assistant coaches have gone on, been really successful, because they come in and they're basically like head coaches. They do a lot of the coaching, a lot of the teaching, and they're ready when they leave.
Yeah. What was how'd you end up at Butler when you went to college?
So Butler was within 3-hour drive, and at the time, different conferences. And Barry Collier was a real successful coach, and my dad respected him. But the staff, they had Thad Matta, they had Jay John, and Jay John went on to coach at Oregon State. Thad Matta obviously has been a lot of places, and I was able to learn from them, and that was great for me, because when I came back and worked for my dad, I was able to bring back some different ideas and different thoughts, and that really still this day I owe a lot of credit to those three for helping pour into me too.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? You play you're there for when Barry Collier's there, you end up all circle around and you coach against him.
Coached against him in Nebraska, yeah.
That's fun. Was it almost a given that you'd go away almost to school, 3 hours away to Butler, and then when you finished,
they didn't
you'd
want
come
me.
back?
They didn't want me that close. They wanted me out, but
3 hours is good.
Close enough I could get back, and then
right.
And then I got my master's at Valpo, and worked that first year as a restricted earnings coach. So I got my master's in 1 year. I was pleased with that. Lived at home, made a whopping $600 a month. That's the only place I could live, but it was awesome because I could spend 24/7 at the office. And there's that book Outliers. You spend 10,000 hours doing something, and you become an expert in it in the field or whatnot. But really, Valpo was struggling at the time, and not as many coaches on a staff, so you could do basically endless amount of work. And at the same time, when your dad's struggling, there's no one you want to work harder for. So when he took the job, I remember Digger Phelps at Notre Dame said, "Don't take it. You'll never win there. You can't win there." And ended up, I remember 20 wins or more from my first year there to won 7 or 8 straight conference championships or something, and from there just really blessed.
Yeah. 98, you mentioned that, the shot by Bryce in Oklahoma City, NCAA tournament against Ole Miss. It's one of those shots that gets replayed every year during March Madness.
Well, I know that if you coach long enough, you're on both ends, probably a great win, a great loss, and we've done both. But that moment, to be able to, normally ESPN will put it as top 3 or 5 NCAA tournament moments in history, but the fact that not only it's your team that you're a part of and coaching, but it's your brother that hits it. So you're able to celebrate it with your brother and dad, which was really neat and really special.
Where were you in that dog pile?
I was on the top. So coaches got on top. They were smart enough to not get on the bottom. But it was amazing. I remember we actually, back then, they didn't have a lot of cell phones. I mean, like maybe one person on the team would have a cell phone for an emergency. But at the hotels, there were so many radio interviews and people calling in, we had to unplug all the phones from the wall, just so that the players could get sleep, because we were one of the first mid-majors to make one of those runs to the Sweet 16, and it was beat Florida State and then lost to Rhode Island. Coach Herrick was coaching the team at the time, so in St. Louis.
A lot of ties there. Was it 9 years? You were what, total?
10 years, I think.
10 years with your dad,
The older we get, they kind of all go together.
That's good.
And then 1 year as a head coach.
Yeah, so maybe 10 years, one year as the head coach there.
Yeah, we can get with Matt Roberts, get the specifics.
But great experience. I mean, great time, in the coaching profession with your dad right there too. That's cool.
And that's, I mean, I think everyone can relate. Your best moments and whatever it is, it might be out golfing, you hit a hole-in-one, you want to share it with family, friends, and to be able to do that. And now, it's not as fun when you lose. So I remember one Christmas we lost right before Christmas, and that nearly wasn't as exciting a Christmas, but so many great memories. And obviously, the older we get, the more we appreciate those memories.
You keep saying that, the older we get.
Yeah, well, you're the only one that defies age.
Right.
Yeah.
When and where did Kelly come into the picture?
Well, Kelly went to law school with my cousin, and there was an introduction, and then from there, it was the last year as an assistant coach, I believe. We were married that year, and then 1 year as a head coach, and then she was pregnant with Mackenzie, and we came down to Waco. Mackenzie was born here. All our kids have been born here.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, she had the tough task of moving everything, because we came here in August, and she had to move for Mackenzie down here in like December. So her and her parents did a great job.
Very cool. So you had just taken over for your dad as head coach at Valpo. 1 year there, really good year, 20 wins, 21 wins in your first year as the head coach, and then Baylor calls. I mean, you've got this set up like I'm sure you and your dad had talked about for years, and all of a sudden you've got this opportunity to leave that and come to Waco.
Well, and God had always put on my heart to be at the highest level where you have a chance to win a national championship, and obviously it's his platform. So with normally in August you're thinking you're preparing for the next year, and actually we had the best recruiting class coming into Valpo that in school's history. So really excited for that group, and then Baylor calls, and how God works is my dad, after that year out, was actually missing coaching, and he talked about, do I go to the NBA? Do I go somewhere? And honestly, I wouldn't have left our team in August if it was somebody else. I didn't think that would have been fair. But for him to come back, they got a better coach out of the deal. So it was a win-win across the board, and it was amazing how God works.
Yeah. Do you remember your first, who made the first contact with you from Baylor?
Honestly, that's such a blur.
Gotcha. But what was your first thought when you thought Baylor? Oh.
Well, you know what? My dad and Valpo had played a tournament here before I was an assistant coach for him.
The Dr. Pepper Invitational.
And they'd played in a lot of tournaments, but my dad always said the hospitality, the people down here, I think Jim Turner was his host, he just loved and bragged about Baylor and Waco, and what a special place it was.
Yeah. Shout out Dr. Pepper Invitational.
There you go.
That's great. And then, so you get the call, you get the contact. I'm sure you dive in, seeing what the situation is like. What were your initial thoughts about taking over this job at that point in history?
Well, I mean, when you pray about things and you feel led, I mean, you go, and the great thing is when you're young, you're just trying to survive that day, and you don't need as much sleep, you know. So putting a staff together, putting a team together in August is not the easiest thing to do, but God put the right people here, and we were able to, remember, not finishing last place in that first year, that group that stuck it out and helped lay the foundation to turn things around. Couldn't be more appreciative and thankful. And I know Matt Saman wrote a book, The Leftovers, and looking back on those years, I know the people in the community especially were so hospitable and gracious. I mean, we come into a lot of games and you're 40-point underdogs, and they showed up and cheered on our guys, and I can't thank them enough for that, and helping us be able to build this program.
That's where the coffee comes in, because you guys were, man, you were blowing and going when you got here.
Yeah, we didn't know if it was daylight or nighttime.
Right. I mean, it was nonstop for you, wasn't it?
And the great thing is, if you like who you're doing it with. That's what I learned from my dad is. Hiring a staff is you want people that make you better on and off the court, and I'm blessed with I think one of my strengths is I recognize I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I want people that are smarter than me in the room. So hiring really good people that make us better, make me better on and off the court is something that I've been blessed with.
I know you I know you well enough to know every decision you make, you take to the Lord in prayer. This had to be one of those.
That.
Yeah. I mean, that's good knowledge there. Would you say you felt called to come to Baylor?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, that was a calling I felt in friends and family. Are you sure he's really calling? And that's the great thing is when you feel led and you follow your heart. And I remember when we got here, my dad wanted to go through the book of Job together because he knew it was going to be tough. And I think after year 3, I'm like, does Job ever end? Is that the only book in the Bible? I mean,
those early years were tough. I mean, you were building your roster, getting guys. Remember Kevin Rogers when you got the commitment from him?
Yeah.
Didn't you yell so loud on the phone you woke up Mackenzie when she was a baby?
Yeah, they probably woke up a lot of people in Waco.
Right. But that was sort of, I mean, that was getting you over the hump, starting to get recruits like him, and then you got Tweedy, and then.
Well, what was so challenging is when you come in August. That year we had between 5 and 7 scholarship players. So you could just imagine today having 5 or 7 scholarship players and then half a team of walk-ons, and you're trying to compete in the best conference in the country. And then the next year, remember, people, especially back in the day, made more decisions on the early signing period and junior year. So really you missed 2 recruiting classes. That 3rd recruiting class was really our first recruiting class. That was the year that we only had half a season. And you think about all the firsts. I mean, we're the only school in NCAA history to ever have a half a season. And what I didn't realize, if anyone's ever in that situation, we can help them out, because not only are you practicing all the way to January, but then when you start playing games, you can think about it. Why you play exhibitions are to get ready. Why you play non-conference games are to get ready. And everyone's going on that highway, and in Texas we got 70, 75 mile an hour speed limits, but you're going say 70, and now you're getting on the ramp going 25, 30, 40. So you're trying to catch up. So you wait all this time it's like waiting all the time for Christmas. You open it up and it's a gift you don't want. First couple games we were terrible, you know, and then by the end of the year, though, the blessing was everyone was tired and worn down. We're fresh. We're like, we only played 5, 6 days. Yeah. So, but I think that really got us going on that trajectory.
Yeah, you remember. So the first game that year was in Lubbock, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it was really nice. Is after not having a non-conference, the conference knew that we needed a bye.
Yeah, love it. Yeah,
give us a bye. Give us a little longer. You know.
So you keep building the roster. Program is on an upward trajectory. 2008, you make the NCAA tournament. Remember the watch party in 2008?
Well, you know, back then you only had a watch party, and it was only covered if you knew you were in the tournament.
Right.
So really, like, there was no downside when CBS said, "Are you having a watch party?" I'm thinking, I mean, at the time, Joey Brackets was just getting into the swing of things. And he's like, you guys are in. He's not 100% sure, but I'm calling you in.
Right.
So I'm like, well, you know, got CBS, you got it. And we're in that watch party, and it was a great turnout, unbelievable turnout. But as you remember, we go all the way to the last pick. And you get close to the end and you're looking around like, no one's had this happen before. I'm like, what do we tell everybody? Like, what if we don't get in? Like, that was never even in the equation. And then I remember when they called us, and I think Coach Mills was the one that said he saw the CBS lights go on right before but I don't know if I was ever so excited. I mean, and that was everybody. I mean, to be a part of that and be in, and to think only 5 years after we got here to be blessed enough to be in the NCAA tournament. And obviously, when you look back in your life, there's a million things you do different, and probably instead of being so excited to be in, we had prepared our guys a little bit better because we didn't stay in it long. But it was so neat, and I'm so glad that team got to enjoy it.
Right, just the build-up to that. Last team called, but you're in the NCAA tournament. Remember an interview with Tony Kornheiser that year. He said you should be the coach of the year, unanimous coach of the year selection. Did you have a minute, you and your staff, to stop and really appreciate what you just accomplished?
Well, when you're in the midst of things, it's always the game, it's after the game, it's recruiting, and it's like there is no, if you spend time reminiscing, you're probably fired or out of it, so you really just, it's on to the next thing. But seeing that memory calling us and the excitement of everyone and remembering that, I know if anyone was here, they'll remember that the rest of their lives.
Yeah. Tell you another thing, Baylor basketball fans will always remember 2010 regional semifinals and finals in Houston. That great Baylor crowd down there.
Yeah,
that was tremendous.
Well, and 2009 we start out, we're ranked, we're I think 15-3, and then we go through a really tough stretch. We lose on senior night. And everybody's like, this isn't the way we wanted this group that got us to the tournament for the first time to go out. But it's amazing how God works. We get into the NIT. We play Georgetown here. And one of my best memories of the Farrell Center was playing Georgetown. The place was rocking. It was an unbelievable game. And then we end up winning 2 more games, going to New York, getting to the championship game. And I think that tournament success, it was the first postseason win since 1950. That really set the stage for 2010. And we did have turnover. I think we were projected 11th. So, I mean, it wasn't like we went in that year as favorites, but it was an unbelievable special year. And that postseason in 2009, I think, set us up for that success. And then you get down to Houston, and Baylor's tailgate scene is amazing now. I don't know if it was like that at Floyd Casey, not from my recollection, but we got down there and it was the biggest tailgates. I mean, it was green and gold everywhere. And I mean, like I was like in the player, like, are you serious? Like, there's this many Baylor fans. I mean, it was amazing. So I think there were 46,000 in attendance. We had to have 43,000 of them. And coming out onto the floor and seeing that, and St. Mary's obviously was an unbelievable performance, and the crowd really helped with that. And then you go to play Duke, and I mean, all up to that last 5 minutes, and you're thinking you're going to a Final Four, and then you lose, and then you see Duke win it all, and you're like, man, we could have won this
that
thing.
Close, yeah.
And then in 2012, you turn around and lose to Kentucky, who was better than us that day, but they beat Kansas in the championship, and we had just beaten Kansas. So realistically, in 2010, you could have won it. 2012, you're probably the second best team, or could have made an argument as the second best team. And then 2017, you were ranked number 1, and I remember we lose to the real hot South Carolina team, and Jonathan Motley tore his meniscus at halftime. And but that year, you could have gone to a Final Four, and then from there, things just take off, as you know. Number 1 seed, COVID happens. That's a chance where you could have won it. You win it. The next year, 15 in a row, and 15-0, and then 3 season-ending injuries from Langston to Jonathan to LJ. We still were a number 1 seed. You lose to Carolina, who was in the championship game, and then so far so good this year.
Yeah.
So.
You talked about the COVID year.
Last year, 9th overall seed, not bad.
Talked about the COVID year. I can remember being in that meeting room at a hotel in Kansas City when things are happening and it's completely out of your control. but all of a sudden you start to feel like the season might come to an end, or that would be the worst case scenario. What was that like to go through?
Well, I can remember the night before we're at the Big 12 tournament, and our players are sitting here, coaches right behind. We're watching the game that we're going to, I think, play the winner of, but it was one of the games that night. And one of the players turns around and says, "Did you see that?" And everybody turned around, and the Utah Jazz, Rudy Gobert, COVID canceled games, the NBA. And right at that point, you're like, wait a minute. If the NBA could cancel, colleges could cancel. And then the next thing you know, you wake up and that happens, and you go from canceling the tournaments one by one to canceling the NCAA tournament, and it all happened like that. And just remembering, I mean, our luck, first time ever number one seed. We can't be number one seed.
Yeah, right.
But again, that team won 23 games in a row. No, the year before was 23 in a row. That team was like 21 in a row or 19 in a row. I mean, so much success. Winningest Power 5 program in the last 4 years. And right now we have the longest nation's win streak. And then the only school to have 3 guys drafted in the top 16. I mean, you can go on and on and on just how blessed we've all been. And coaches know it takes a team to win. So shout out to the administration, President Livingstone, Mac Rhodes, and everybody, the fans, the coaches, but most of all the players.
So you get to the 2021 season that ends with the big confetti in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
What do you remember going into that season? You had to feel good about the guys that you had and the build-up. I mean, it was so disappointing the year before, but, I mean, you got these guys back. You got some dudes that you're going to go to battle with.
Well, I think if you remember back, the first question was there going to be a season? Because at the time, you had 2 conferences saying they're not going to play football, and credit the Big 12. Shout out to Dr. Ackerman. Shout out to Mac Rhodes helping facilitate Dr. Ackerman, passing on his wisdom to the powers that be to help decide what the Big 12 was going to do from the standpoint, if we don't play football, there might not have been any sports played that year. And hindsight, the right decision was made. We win a national championship. So many players, and a lot of times people deem success like, are you able to go play professionally? No. Are you able to be on a team, have those memories, have those experiences, be able to handle adversity and success, be prepared for life, get a degree? Like, I mean, all that goes into you being successful in life, and so many kids were able to because of that.
You guys handled being in the bubble in the NCAA tournament that year so well. I mean, the culture of joy, you got to tell that story, and then it really played out because other teams just weren't able to handle it as well as you guys were.
Well, I think one illustration I can give is in Christmas time, everybody might get together with their extended families. And when families get along, it's such a blessing. When families don't get along, you're dreading being around them. And in the bubble, you could tell who liked being with one another and who was ready to go home. And one of the closest teams, if not the closest team we've ever coached. And people think coaching is, players aren't robots. And it's not, well, go here, do this. I mean, you have to embrace your role. You have to embrace your teammates. You have to cherish and appreciate them. You have to play for a culture of joy, Jesus, others, yourself. But the teams that have great talent don't always win it if it's not the right priorities, and if they're not putting their teammates first. And I mean, it was like we'd joke, but it was, you'd hear a team saying, "I'm so ready to get out of here," or a couple players saying, and next thing you know, they lose the next game. You know, where every game we won, it's like it's a blessing. We get to stay together, and we did a lot of fun things together, but really a close team, and a team that appreciated and valued and respected one another, and everybody in the bubble played a part of that.
Where did the culture of joy come from?
Well, we've always, since day one in the program, tried to implement Jesus, others, yourself, but Tony Dungy, Dabo Sweeney coming up with the acronym JOY just makes it easy to remember. And The Smart Take from the Strong, it's a book I read a long time ago and from Pete Carrill. And whenever you find a better way to teach or do something, you implement it. And it's just an easier way to remember who you're playing for and what you're playing for. And every year you try to, it's a different year, it's a different journey, and I equate it to climbing the top of a mountain. I mean, you know how to get up there, but the path changes because you have different weather, different climate, different tools, different people on the journey. So like, how can you get as high as you possibly can, and try to, as a coach, put players in the most positions to be successful.
One of the great memories, winning the national championship, limited crowd there in Indianapolis, but you came back to Waco and had this huge parade, this celebration parade that included anybody and everybody. You know, it wasn't just a Baylor thing, it was a Baylor Waco Central Texas thing. And for your former players to come back, and they symbolically led that parade because they're the ones who set the foundation.
Well, I think on the way to the championship game, the first thing that stood out were how many Baylor fans were lined up along the path on the streets to cheer on the guys. And that, to me, was the first step to winning that game. And the crowd was outstanding. I know it was limited who could be there, but they really helped us get that win, number one. And we know how important crowds are and what effect they have on games. The second thing is when you came back, I mean, only God's timing, where COVID ends, you're able to have a parade, and you know everybody would want to be in a parade, but when you haven't been able to celebrate and do things, I'm sure anyone that thought about going was like, I am going, and the turnout was just amazing. As a coach, why you coach is to see other people happy and successful, reach their goals and dreams, to see our former players and coaches. And I remember some of our older players like, hey, we can get you a golf cart. No, I am walking. And to see them it just honored for what they've done throughout the years to help us get to this point, definitely made my heart warm.
Very cool. You mentioned Kelly, how y'all met, and Mackenzie being born right after you got to Waco, or several months after you got to Waco. All your kids have grown up here and grown up with you as the head coach at Baylor.
Well, and that's a real blessing, because a lot of times in the coaching profession, coaches move a lot, and just how the community embraces people and how warm they are. I mean, Mackenzie, Brody, and Peyton, so many friends and family and people in this area because of the relationships, but also they grew up looking up to our players, and so blessed to have great players as role models for them. And it's amazing just how they've impacted all our coaches' kids' lives, and people in Central Texas or people that come back for summer camps. And just, I mean, you get an Adam Flagler, a Jared Butler, a Davion Mitchell, a Macy O'T, whoever, Mark speaking wisdom and life into young kids, and now all of a sudden they're encouraged and inspired because of that. So really, really blessed there. And Mackenzie's in her sophomore year and doing a great job with some basketball tough questions she asked, but that's been great to see. Just get more and more people worldwide see the personalities of the players we have. I know the last one, Matt Roberts said, had 77,000 hits or something. So a lot of people really getting a chance to see the personalities and what our players are about.
Final question: when your time at Baylor is done, way in the future from right now, how do you hope Baylor fans remember you?
Man after God's heart. I think David in the Bible had the best compliment, and we've always tried to have it be God's program and His platform. And teacher, what's the greatest commandment of the law? Love your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. And hopefully we've treated people like we've wanted to be treated. You always go into any situation and you want to leave it better until God calls you to do something else. And that's really important for us. Sometimes when you lose, people like they're passionate. No one takes a loss harder than the coaches. But I tell you why. You want it for your players, obviously, and your program success. But we don't want to let the people down either that are part of the Baylor family. I mean, we love them. We want to see them be successful and happy, and we hate to see them hurt. So, I mean, when we do what we do it for more than just ourselves.
Thanks again for joining us on the Sic Em Podcast, a sport and story production. If you enjoyed this conversation with Scott Drew, head over to BaylorPlus.com where you can watch the premium video version of this podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, leave a review, and tell your friends about us. I'm your host, John Morris, and I hope you'll join me next week on another edition of the Sic Em Podcast.